Before starting foundation paper piecing, you need the right tools. My favorite tools are right here. This is my Creative Grids ruler that is 4.5 by 12.5, and it has grips on one side, and I really like using that one for cutting at the end. Something that is not necessary, however, is really helpful is the add a quarter plus ruler. The reason this is so helpful is because on the back side it has a lip on it that is 1/4 inch. Hopefully you can see that. There's a lip here to butt up against your seams, which I will show later. And it comes with 2 different sizes. The other thing I suggest having is a washable glue stick. You're not going to use very much, but make sure it's washable so that it comes off of your fabric easily. And then lastly, of course, a rotary cutter. The first thing you want to do is to print out your templates. I suggest using the Carol Doakes foundation paper piecing paper. It's just much thinner paper and you can see the lines through the paper, which I really like. So print your templates, however many you need, on your foundation paper piecing paper. You can use regular printer paper, but it is a thicker weight and will be harder to tear in the end. On the back side, you're going to use your glue stick and dab a bit of glue on the back side of section 1. So I can see the lines through the paper, and I just lined it up with the corner, my piece of fabric with the corner, dabbed a bit of glue, and placed it on. And I did that with both sides of my templates, the first piece. Now that I have my first piece glued on and ready to go, I'm going to flip over to the front side and see where the line is between sections 1 and 2. Now I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line it up with that line between 1 and 2. And I'm going to fold my paper back. It can also be helpful in the future if you just go ahead and put a crease on all of your lines. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Now that all my lines are creased, I'm going to go back to the line in between 1 and 2 and fold on that line. You'll see some of section 1's fabric hanging over. You're going to take your add a 1/4 inch ruler and put the lip over that edge right up against the paper fold. This gives you exactly 1/4 of seam allowance on your fabric, and now you trim. Now that you have your first piece trimmed, take your second piece and you're going to line it up underneath the first one. These are solid, so they're the same on front and back, but if you are using prints or fabric that does have a front and a back, you'll want to make sure that the right side's together. So this piece has the right side facing up, and this one, the right side is facing up now as well. So right sides together, line up the 1/4 inch edge. And if you ever are unsure about whether or not your piece is going to cover the next section that it's in, by folding the paper back, you can see the outline of the next section. If your piece of fabric underneath it goes all the way around this outline, then you're good to go. So now we're going to lay the fabric back over, and with both pieces of fabric together, you're going to sew on the paper right along this line, making sure to stop where the next line intersects. You can see right here, I've stitched right on the line, stopping right before it crosses the next line. And looking on the back, we have our piece here. We're going to open it and press it. Now that we've pressed our paper, we're ready for the next section. Flipping back to the template side, you're going to find the line in between the next 2 sections. So we just did 1, 2, and now the next section is 3. So the line in between those sections is right here. Since we've already creased it, it folds over easily, and we can go ahead and trim our fabric to 1/4 inch. And we're ready to add the next piece of fabric. Again, right sides together, right underneath, lining up, and then flip this back over and sew on the line, stopping before it intersects at the next line. As you can see, I sewed on the line in between sections 1 and 3, right here. And now we're going to open it up and press it. Now that we have both sections pressed, we're ready for the next one. We've done 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to do 4. So we want to crease on the line between 2 and 4. And using our 1/4 inch ruler, we'll cut off the excess. We're going to add our next piece of fabric. Again, if you're unsure about whether or not that piece of fabric is laying in the right position, if it needs to go up higher or down lower, you can follow the outline of that section, and as long as this piece of fabric goes around it, then it will fit. So I'm going to continue doing these same steps until we have the whole front panel finished. Now that we have the whole front template completed, we are going to trim the block. This is where I use my Creative Grids ruler. The reason the templates have a dashed line is so that you can accurately line up your 1/4 inch. So I'm going to line up my ruler with the 1/4 inch line and a 1/4 inch on the ruler and cut all the extra off of my template. Now we have nice clean lines for our template, and we're ready to attach it to the other side. Now that I have both halves of my template completed, and this is a scrappy version, which is why it doesn't really match. But now that I have these two completed, you're going to lay them down side by side and fold one over. Now, you don't want your points to match up like this, because otherwise when you open up your template, it's going to be off. So what you're going to do is shift the top layer up by a 1/4 inch so that the tip of the triangle overhangs by a 1/4 inch, and you can see the bottom template triangle by a 1/4 inch, and you'll sew along this line. Now we have our completed block, and you can see that the edges line up nicely and everything looks good. Now, it is important to note as well that I did use a smaller stitch length of about 1.4 to 1.6. This creates smaller perforations, which makes it easier to tear the paper off when you're done. I like to tear the seams as I go. That way, when the whole quilt is complete, you don't have tiny sections that are stuck in between little seams. And then when I am all done, I tear off the bigger sections. So that is how I make the Deviate quilt blocks.